Hello class, welcome to lesson 8.4, which is all about quadratic equations. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to factor trinomials with the form of ax squared plus bx plus c, and you should be able to solve equations of that same form. So this is basically what we did yesterday, except today we're adding a number in front of your x squared variable, okay? So we're going to have a coefficient up there. So it's going to be fairly similar, but there's just going to be like two more steps, okay? So when we go to factor a polynomial that has a coefficient, in this first one you see that there's a 5x squared plus 13x plus 6. The first thing you want to look for is, do these coefficients all have something in common? So if those were all even numbers, so if it was 2, 4, and 6, you could pull a 2 out of each of those. But 5, 13, and 6, they don't have anything in common, so I can jump right in to solving this polynomial. So we're going to keep our x method, and on the bottom is still your b term, but on the top it's going to change a little bit. It's going to be whatever your coefficient is times your last number. Yesterday it was just whatever this last number is. Now we're going to multiply it by whatever that first number is, okay? So we have 5 times 6, and that means we're looking for a product of 30 and something that adds to 13. So if I do 10 and 3, I know that will get me to what I'm looking for. Okay, so now I have my numbers, and yesterday what we would do is we would just write like x plus 10, x plus 3, and call it a day, except now we have that number, and if we forgot, or if we did it the same way as yesterday, we would end up with just an x squared instead of that 5x squared. So we have to do it slightly different. So today what we're going to do is we start by rewriting what we had. So we have 5x squared, and then instead of writing 13x, we're going to split it up into our two numbers that we came up with. So plus 10x plus 3x plus 6. Okay, so it's the same equation we started with, except instead of writing 13, we split it up into two different parts, okay? This is a very, very, very important step, so star it, highlight it, do something so you don't forget. Now we're going to factor by grouping like we did a couple sections ago. So now I look and I can start factoring based on what's in parentheses. So I put my 5x squared and my 10x together. Those both have a 5x in common. And if I pull that out, I'm left with an x plus 2. And then if I leave myself some space, I can say plus. Then I have 3x plus 6. So if I pull out a 3, I have x plus 2 again. I look, I see my parentheses match. Remember, that's very important. If they don't match, that's a hint that your answer is incorrect. Maybe it means that you could have pulled something out before you did the cross, or it could be that you had a calculation error. There's multiple things, but usually what that means is go back and double check your work. Okay, so then our final answer ends up being 5x plus 3, because it's what we have outside of our parentheses, times x plus 2. And if I FOIL that, I have 5x times x, so I get that 5x squared, plus 5x times 2 gives me that 10x, plus 3 times x is 3x, plus 3 times 2 is 6. This becomes 13x, and I see I came back to the same thing I started with, so I know my answer is correct. That was just a checking method. Now I know that I am done. Okay, so I know this is a lot of steps, but we are going to do it several times in this video to help you understand, okay? So let's take a look at our second one. I start by looking, I have 6x squared plus 22x minus 8. That should immediately set off alarms in my head, thinking these are all even numbers. What can I pull up? So if I take a 2 out of each of those, I'm left with 3x squared plus 11x minus 4. Now I look 3, 11, and 4. nothing in common there, so I know I can now proceed to the way I'm accustomed to doing the problems. So now I do add up to 11 and multiply my 3 times negative 4. So I'm looking for a negative 12. So what multiplies to a negative 12 but adds to a positive 11? That would be 12 and negative 1. So then from there, remember, you are going to take those and separate them. So I keep my 2. I don't want to forget about this, okay? It's very easy to forget about it. Keep my 2. I write it 3x squared plus 12x minus x, because that's my minus 1 right here. Minus x, and then minus 4. Now I can group and solve based on the grouping. So I have 2, and then I can pull out a 3 from my first set of parentheses, 3x actually, because 3x squared and 12x have 3x in common. So I'm left with x plus 4, and then I have a negative x minus 4, so I think I'm going to pull out a negative 1, so I'm left with positive x plus 4 inside my parentheses. Now I see that I have x plus 4 and x plus 4, so I am good to go. So I'm going to write 2, and then I have x plus 4 times 3x minus 1. Okay, and if you don't remember to factor at this very first step, chances are you're going to have a really hard time coming up with numbers that work for your little x to solve, or when you get to the separating step, your parentheses here are not going to end up being the same. Okay, so it's very important that you pull out the greatest common factor before you even start the rest of the process. Go ahead and try to factor 3x squared plus 26x plus 35 on your own. Hopefully you ended up with 3x plus 5 times x plus 7. All right, go ahead and try one more. Hopefully you saw that these all had a 2 in common and pulled that out first. You said 2 times the quantity of x plus 2 times the quantity of x plus 5. If you have any questions about that, be sure to ask for some help. All right, let's look at our second example. We have 2n squared minus n minus 1. Okay, so I have a 2, a 1, and a 1. I can't factor anything out of there, so I'm going to go straight to figuring out what my numbers have to be. So it has to add to a negative 1 and multiply 2 times negative 1, or it needs to multiply to a negative 2. So what multiplies to a negative 2 and adds to a negative 1? That gives me negative 2 and a positive 1. And if I keep going, I rewrite it, 2n squared minus 2n minus n minus 1. If I group those together, I can pull a 2n out of the first one, and I'm left with n minus 1. And then I have a negative n minus 1. Oh, I wrote that incorrectly. That should be a positive n, because I have a positive 1 over here. So I'm left with positive n times 1. So I don't need to pull anything out. So I put a 1 in front, because remember, multiplying or dividing by 1 doesn't change anything. I'm left with n minus 1 inside my parentheses. So I know my parentheses match. So I can write n minus 1 times 2n plus 1. And I can FOIL it out to see if I end up with what I started with. If I do that, I know my answer is correct. So on the test, you can check every single answer if you want. All right, letter B, we have 10y squared minus 35y plus 30. I see I have a 10, 35, and a 30. All of those have a 5 in common. So I'm going to start by pulling out a 5. So I'm left with 2y squared minus 7y plus 6. Okay, and then I have a 2, -7, 6, nothing in common there. So I know now I need to make my cross, maybe make it a bit bigger so it's easier for you to see. I need it to add to a -7 and multiply to a 2 times 6, or 12. So what multiplies to 12 and adds to -7? I would say -4 and -3. So I'm left with 5. Then I'm going to do my bigger parentheses. I'm going to say 2y squared minus 4y minus 3y plus 6. I can then go through and say, what do these all have in common? So I carry my 5 down. I say these first ones have a 2y in common. I'm left with y minus 2 plus -3y plus 6. I see I have a positive y here, and right here I have a negative, so I'm going to pull out a -3, and I'm left with positive y minus 2 now. Okay, then I just need to look, my parentheses match, so I'm going to say 5 times y minus 2 times 2y minus 3, and I am finished with the problem. Alright, go ahead and try one on your own. Hopefully you ended up with the quantity of 2x minus 3 times the quantity of 5x minus 4. If you have questions, please be sure to ask for some help. Alright, example 3, we're talking about prime polynomials. So sometimes you will have a polynomial that is prime, which means it can't be factored. So we're going to look and try to figure out how to tell if something's prime. Pretty much start with the same process that we've been doing. Check to see, is there a greatest common factor? So we have a 4, -1, and a 7. Okay? Nothing I can pull out. So I start by making my x. I'm looking for something that adds to a -1 and multiplies to a 4 times 7, or 28. So what multiplies to 28 and adds to -1? I noticed that some of you are having difficulty in section 8.3 trying to find numbers that fit these descriptions. So I recommended to some of you to start writing lists. So numbers that multiply to the product we're looking for. So 1 and 28 multiply, but if I add those together in any way, I'm not going to end up at a 1. 2 times 14, 2 times 14, again, it multiplies to the 28, but it won't add up to 1. 3 doesn't go into 28. 4 and 7 go into 28, but they don't add up to 1, or -1. 5 doesn't go into 28. 6 doesn't go into 28, and then we're back at that 7. So those are all of our factors that go into the number 28. So that means that since none of these add to 1, this polynomial is considered prime. Okay? So that's how you tell if a polynomial is prime. If you can't find two numbers, or if two numbers don't exist that multiply to the number and add up, it is prime. Okay? Let's try another one. We look at part B. We have 2x squared plus 3x minus 5. I have 2, 3, and 5. Nothing in common there. So what I'm going to do, make my x. So I have something that adds to 3 and multiplies to a 2 times -5, or a -10. So what multiplies to a -10 and adds to a positive 3? That would be a positive 5 and a -2. So if I write my 2x squared, I'm going to switch my order and put 2x there since I already have a 2. So I have minus 2x plus 5x minus 5. And then if I go through to my parentheses, I have 2x in common, so I'm left with x minus 1, plus I have a 5 in common here, so x minus 1. And when I write my final answer, I have 2x plus 5 on the outside of my parentheses, and both of my parentheses show an x minus 1 inside. So this one is not prime. We have found an answer. Okay, so it's not always going to tell you if it's prime. It wants to know, and it, including I would like to know if you can identify if something is prime, okay? Go ahead and see if you can factor this one if possible. Hopefully you discovered that there are no numbers that multiply to 9 and add to -5. So you said that this was prime. If you have questions, please be sure to ask for some help. All right, our last problem is a story problem. Okay, we're talking about a person that throws a ball upward from a 506-foot tall building. Okay, so someone's on top of a building, they throw a ball up. The ball's height is represented by h in feet. Okay, so height in feet after t seconds, so however long it's been in the air, is given by the following equation. H equals -16t squared plus 48t plus 506. The ball lands on a balcony that is 218 feet above the ground. How many seconds was it in the air? Okay, so we have our equation. We know we're going to use this in order to find our answer. We started at the 506-foot tall building. That's included in our equation already. But it lands not at 0. It lands at 218 feet. So we want to know how many seconds was it in the air. Well, as soon as it hits that balcony, it's no longer in the air. So we're going to say 218 equals -16t squared plus 48t plus 506. From there, we want to get equal to 0. So that way we can solve for time. And if we set it equal to 0, that means I have to subtract 218 from both sides. So I have 0 equals -16t squared plus 48t plus 288. Now from there, I'm going to try to solve it the same way I have been all lesson. So I look, I have -16, 48, and 288. And I look, I see, I think those might all have a number in common, and I think it might be 16. So I can check it using a calculator, that's fine. And I find out that they do all have 16 in common. So I'm going to take out a 16 from every term. So -16t squared divided by 16 gives me -t squared plus 3t plus, let's see, 288 divided by 16 leaves me with 18. Okay? And if I keep going from here, well, this is still equal to 0. I have 0 equals, and I need to find numbers that add up to 3 and multiply to, we have a -1 times 18, so a -18. So multiply to a -18, add to a +3, that's going to be 6 and -3. So I'm going to say 16 -t squared, I'm going to say plus 6t minus 3t plus 18 will be what I need to factor in order to find my solution. So I still have my 0 equals 16, and then if I group these together, I see that that first one has a t in common. So I'm going to leave, if I pull out a t, I'm left with a -t plus 6. And on the second one, if I group those together, I can pull out a 3. And I'm left with -t plus 6. So my parentheses are now the same. So I have 0 equals 16 times -t plus 6, and I have t plus 3. From here, this is where we end up setting things equal to 0 like we did before. So I just need, we have 3 numbers here. This is number 1, this is number 2, this is our third number. Okay, so 16, when you have a constant out in front, you can kind of forget about it because you can't change that number. There's no variable. But I can set this number equal to 0, so it doesn't matter. Even if I have 16 and then another number, this is all going to equal 0. Okay, so I take that second number, I have negative t plus 6, I set that equal to 0 and I solve. So I say minus 6, negative t equals negative 6, or t equals 6. And the third number, I do that same thing, I set it equal to 0. So t plus 3 equals 0, or t equals negative 3. Now let's think about this for a second. We're talking t represents time. So I have t equals 6 and t equals negative 3. Does a negative make sense for time? Not really. So I'm going to cross that answer off because I'm looking for how long has it been in the air. And negative 3 seconds just doesn't make sense. So I throw that answer out and I say the ball was in the air for 6 seconds. All right. Why don't you go ahead and try to solve one on your own? Good luck. Hopefully you determined that the answer is 3/4 of a second. Okay? If you have any questions about this example or anything in this lesson, please be sure to reach out for some help. I hope you guys have a fantastic day.